Welcome to Mystery Murdery Thingy.
Uncut. Unedited.
Raw. So we're coming to you unedited this 12:33 in the morning on a Thursday because my hard drive blew up.
Yeah, blew up right there in your room. There's burn marks everywhere.
Freaking exploded.
And you have blisters on your face. I shouldn't joke about that.
I've got a face for radio now.
Oh, God. What?
A face for radio. Never
Does
heard
that mean
expression?
you're ugly?
Yes, that means you're ugly.
I don't think you're ugly.
It's like saying a face only a mother could love.
Wow.
But anyway,
like Ed Gein?
my hard drive did not actually, not even Ed Gein. Ed Gein loved his mother's face. That's a different thing. More creepy thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so there will be no editing with this video.
Yes, so I do
not... We're just not video.
Yeah, see, these are the kinds of things that we would cut out normally, but it's in there.
We're just going to be shitting around. Goofing
It's going to be a little bit loose today, so just prepare yourself. So anyway, my computer's in the shop. That's the main point. And therefore, no intro, no outro, no editing. We're just going.
It's just going to be this.
We're just going to do it.
This is what it's going to be.
So if it sounds kind of weird to you...
And you can't even edit my singing voice to make me sound good. I'm
like
kidding.
I always do. T-Pain style. I'm on a boat.
I'm going to put you in a log cabin somewhere in Aspen. Maybe we should go to Aspen.
Aspen would be cool. We've been talking
about
doing a Colorado trip.
Yeah, we're trying to go to Colorado. Oh, also let me say a couple things. I got the Instagram page up. I actually got it up a couple weeks ago.
Oh.
It's been up.
Okay.
I haven't posted anything yet.
You should do that.
Because I don't want to post like bodies of like human combustion because I think I'll get banned. So we can post like victims.
Okay.
Like their faces and stuff. And what they looked like and maybe what the killers looked like and stuff like mugshots maybe, stuff like that.
We feel like we should be doing more around the podcast.
We really should. We need to open up our Facebook page because it's closed right now. We need to open it.
I don't
or
think we
make
need to
a new
do that.
one.
No, what we need to do is make a page.
Oh.
But
do you think people will like it?
People have closed groups. Like the MFM group is closed.
Oh, yeah.
It's got like 157,000 people in it, but it's a closed group.
Oh, yeah.
If you make it open, then that's not really... I don't think it's the same thing. I don't think it's what you're thinking of.
You're right.
Yeah. Because like before I had it, this is also the kind of stuff we would cut out normally because now we're getting boring. So let's just move on.
Okay, we're moving on. So last time I talked about Tupac, and this time I'm going to talk about Biggie.
Right.
I'll just go first then. Just for that transition.
Okay. Anything else we want to say at the beginning?
I don't think so.
I feel like I've had some corrections from previous episodes, but I haven't been diligent enough to actually like write them down. The one I can remember is like the Michael B. Jordan thing. I was just making shit up. I was just like totally pulling stuff out of my ass.
Michael B. Jordan?
Remember we talked about like I went off on this whole tangent about how it's Michael B. Jordan because he didn't want to be conflated with Michael Jordan, and like no, I don't think any of that's true. I was basically just making it up. I like looked on his Wikipedia page later and I was like, oh, I don't think any of that's true.
I believed you.
If you say things confidently enough, people will believe you, even if what you're saying is complete bullshit.
Oh my god, actually,
we strive for accuracy, but obviously sometimes we're talking off the cuff. What?
Did you hear that you know what? No, I was going to make something up to like prove your point, but I can't think of anything that's not ridiculous.
Right. Plus, whoever's listening to this could just look it up, and then they would know.
You know, Mario, that's not the point.
So I'm sure there's other corrections. I need to go back and listen to some of the last couple and like see if we need to correct some stuff. But anyway,
alrighty then.
I also keep forgetting to say my sources, which I'm also not going to really do today because I didn't write them all down. Because my computer blew up. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it.
All right. You ready?
Are we ready?
Are you ready?
Are you ready for some football?
A night of nights tonight.
No. Okay.
Let's dance.
Not a musical.
This isn't High School Musical 3. What are you talking about? This is why I'm here.
I was in high school so many years ago.
Oh, God. You're old.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to start.
Okay.
Like I said, Biggie Smalls. I'm going to talk about his murder, which is very, very interesting. The thing about Biggie Smalls is that he has more of a, not as many theories around and mysteries surrounding his murder, in that we kind of know who did it, but it's nobody's, like, the LAPD messed up, basically.
We were talking about how that's, like, a recurring theme that we've been noticing in these. Like,
the police just...
Yeah, that's when mysteries tend to crop up, is when, like, when police screw up the investigation.
Yep.
It's going to come up in mine today, too.
For real?
So, yeah.
All right.
So I feel like that's just, like, something we're going to have to, like, get used to. The, like, part of why things are mysterious is just because, like, there's a certain few hours at the beginning of an investigation that you just never get
crucial.
back.
Yeah.
That's completely crucial. I mean, we saw that in the OJ case. We saw that in the Jean Bonnet case.
Yep.
It's just like, it's a real recurring thing. But anyway.
And in both Tupac and Biggie's deaths.
Right.
It was really... They actually waited a month. They waited a month to start a full investigation.
What? But they knew it was a murder.
Yep.
See, but this is also that we've also talked about before, this concept of the lesser dead. Like, Biggie and Tupac to the LAPD in the mid-90s, I'm sure it did not seem like... Well, I guess it wasn't the LAPD for Tupac.
Well, let's begin, because there's a lot that I can go into about that.
Yeah.
So, Christopher Wallace, better known as Biggie Smalls or the Notorious B.I.G., was born in Brooklyn. And as we know, he was an absolute hip-hop legend all throughout the 90s. He was similar to Tupac in that his death is also a murder mystery and still has many theories. So, the anniversary of his death is actually Friday. Oh. This upcoming Friday, which is also my sister's birthday, so shout out to my sister. She's turning 17, which is bizarre.
Yeah, you go, Skylar.
10 for Skylar.
It's your birthday.
Anywho, Biggie was killed March 9th, 1997 in Los Angeles. So he was shot 4 times in a drive-by shooting, just like Tupac was. So the reason he was in LA was to promote his new album titled Life After Death. And it was actually scheduled to drop a few weeks later on March 25th. It's
quite a prescient title.
He actually has a song called Ready to Die.
What?
That he wrote in 94. So, there's that, too.
A few years before,
yeah.
Okay.
He gave a radio interview on March 5th detailing his new album, as well as the filming of the music video for his new single, Hypnotize. And interestingly enough, he talked about how he, like, feared for his safety during this time. And this was 6 months after Tupac was killed. And he hired, like, private security, like, extra security to follow him around and stuff. So 2 days before his death, March 7th, was the Soul Train Awards. And then that night, he attended an after party where both the Crips and the Bloods were in attendance. And I'd also like to honorably mention the fact that our girl, Aaliyah, was also there. Oh. And she would die 3 years later. I think she died in 2000, I think.
Was hers mysterious?
She died in a plane crash.
Ooh.
And the thing about that was that they were filming a music video and they got done a day early with the music video, so they went on a flight early.
So she wasn't even supposed to be there.
She wasn't even supposed to be there. And it was a private jet, and apparently the jet was 700 pounds over the, like, weight limit. And so when it landed, like, nose down, and everybody in it died.
That's pretty terrible.
It's tragic. We should watch Queen of the Damned sometime, because that's a great movie. Anywho, on the early morning of March 9th, around 12:30 a.m., so that was, the awards were the 8th, and then midnight rolled around, and then it's March 9th. So around 12:30 a.m., Biggie and his entourage left the party that had been shut down by the fire department due to overcrowding. He left the party with none other than Sean Combs. Shows up again, a.k.a., P. Diddy or Puff Daddy. I always call him P. Diddy.
The mogul,
who at this time was the CEO of the East Coast record label Bad Boy Records. So as they were leaving, here's what happened. There were 3 cars, 2 SUVs, and then 1 other car carrying their Bad Boy Records head of security and some other guys. P. Diddy was in another car with 3 bodyguards, and then the third car was Biggie with his driver and then 2 of his associates. So by 12:45 a.m., the streets were crowded with people leaving the event. Biggie's SUV stopped at a red light on the corner of Wilshire Boulevard and South Fairfax Avenue, just 50 yards from the Peterson Auto Museum. Then a dark-colored Chevy Impala pulled up alongside Biggie's SUV. The driver of the Impala, a black male dressed in a blue suit and a bow tie, rolled down his window, drew a 9mm blue steel pistol, and fired at the Suburban, hitting Biggie 4 times. So out of everyone in the car, Biggie was the only one who was shot. Yeah.
Wow.
So this shit was, like, targeted. P. Diddy, so what happened was there were 3 cars, right? His car actually made the light, and Biggie's didn't, so he was stopped at that light. So P. Diddy ran out of his car to Biggie's car, and they drove to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, where Biggie was pronounced dead at 1:15 a.m. So
DOA.
Yes, he was dead on arrival. So there's a couple theories that I found, but I got the main theory from BuzzFeed Unsolved. So Suge Knight, who was the CEO of the other Death Row Records, I think, and that's the West Coast.
Yeah,
and,
Death Row Records.
Along with corrupt LAPD officers killed Biggie Smalls. That's the theory. And the motive for this was to avenge Tupac's death.
Of course.
So one of the main things to support, and that's, again, the East Coast, West Coast rivalry.
Right, which had been simmering for many years.
Quite some time.
Yeah.
So one of the main things to support this possible theory is the fact that there were LAPD officers on the payroll of Death Row Records, and they were, like, serving as security guards. So they were, like, on both sides.
Right.
One of the officers, named David Mack, was on this payroll. What incriminates him is his relationship with Suge Knight and the fact that he was there the night of the party. Furthermore, he drives a black Chevy Impala, like the one seen at that intersection. So another man named Amir Muhammad also has a connection to David Mack, and he is the alleged hitman, the one who pulled the trigger. His face was also picked out of a lineup of witnesses. Out of a lineup by witnesses.
Right.
And his face matched the police sketch as well. So this info came from a prison informant named Mario Hammonds, who claimed that Suge Knight's crew...
No relation
to you, sorry. Who claimed, not that first names don't even, like, Mario...
I was just making that joke earlier today. It's like someone who's like, oh, are they related? And they have the same first name. And you're like, oh, wow, that person's really dumb.
No, honey,
Sorry,
no.
go on. I was joking.
So, prison informant Mario Hammonds, who claimed that Suge Knight's crew, quote, handled the business. So, similar to, and that brings me to saying, again, similar to Tupac's murder, that the LAPD didn't investigate properly at all. So, there was no forensic testing on David Mack's Black Impala. They did not interview Amir Muhammad. And the lead investigator, Stephen Katz, quote, forgot to hand over 200 pages of documents. And these documents described in full detail the involvement of another LAPD officer, like, in the investigation.
It's the thin blue line.
So, former LAPD Lieutenant Sergio Robledo commented on how the Robbery Homicide Division had waited an entire month before beginning a full investigation. And he talked about how he had never seen that in 30 years. A murder of a big-time celebrity, usually they would be right on that,
Sure.
but they weren't. And when he... Russell Poole is another officer who also mainly came up with this theory. When he talked to his fellow officers about that, they said, no, we're not going to go there.
Wow.
Yeah. So the murder was actually declared a mistrial due to that missing evidence, that 200 pages of missing documents. Also, Biggie was shot by a Gecko 9mm armor-piercing ammunition. So this ammunition is only sold by 2 distributors in the U.S., and they found bullet casings in David Mack's home.
Of the same kind.
Of the same kind.
But obviously they never did any ballistics to see if it was the same weapon.
Exactly.
Wow.
So, just like in Tupac's murder, there's a theory. So there's that theory, and there's another theory that P. Diddy did it. And P. Diddy could also profit posthumously. Is that how you say that?
Posthumously. Yeah.
Posthumously.
After death.
After death, yes. And there was also a rumor that Biggie was thinking of leaving Bad Boy Records, just like there was a rumor that Tupac was thinking of leaving Death Row Records. So it's that kind of money-fueled rage that kind of is a big theory and a big factor in this, for sure, especially if those LAPD officers were on a payroll.
So in that specific theory, the Sean Combs theory, it would have been basically that he felt betrayed.
Exactly.
That, you know, if I can't have you, then no one can have you.
Exactly.
You know, kind of the jilted lover kind of.
Yeah.
But in this case, it'd be more about, you know, loving the money that Biggie was bringing in, obviously.
For sure. So, in 2006, Wallace's mother, Valletta Wallace, filed a $500 million wrongful death lawsuit against the LAPD, alleging that corrupt officers were responsible for the murder.
Right.
But that, I don't think that went anywhere. I didn't write down anything else about it.
I would imagine that would have been a really tough suit to...
Exactly.
Yeah.
For sure. So, retired LAPD officer Greg Kading alleged that Suge... This is also another theory. Retired LAPD officer Greg Kading alleged that Suge hired fellow Blood Gang member Wardell Faust, also known as Poochie, to murder Biggie, and that Poochie was paid $13,000. He also alleged that Teresa Swan, the mother of Suge Knight's child, was also involved in the murder and was paid $25,000 to set up meetings both before and after the shooting took place. In 2003, Poochie was murdered by a drive-by shooting by rival gang members while at a stoplight on his motorcycle.
Wow.
In 2003. So if that was true, pop, somebody just popped him off. And again, the situation is similar to Yadi Gaddafi, who was one of the witnesses in Tupac's murder. And he was also killed before anybody could interview him, anybody could talk to him. He was one of the witnesses who was there and said that he could identify the shooter, but he was later killed.
Yeah.
Just like this Poochie guy was. So I'm going to talk about Tupac and Biggie's relationship a little bit. So they met in LA in 1993 during a, quote, weed-fueled get-together where Tupac cooked and everyone just kind of chilled. And that's where, like, kind of their relationship mainly started. A lot of their West Coast, East Coast rap rivalry, it became more real after Tupac was shot 5 times at a recording studio, which I'll talk about in a second. They actually had did a freestyle rap off at Madison Square Garden one time, the two of them, called Where Brooklyn At, and there's actually a pretty good recording of it.
That's crazy.
It's really good.
Yeah.
So their relationship crumbled after what happened in New York, and that was when Tupac was shot 5 times and then he was robbed as he walked into a recording studio, and he was walking in there with Biggie and P. Diddy.
Wow.
And those people were never apprehended either. Nobody was ever arrested for that. And their feud kind of made both of them more famous.
Sure.
Type of thing, you know?
Of course.
And I got this quote from Biggie's wife, Faith Evans, and it says, so by the time Tupac was killed, she says, I think it's fair to say he was probably afraid, given everything that was going on at the time and all the hype that was put on this so-called beef that he didn't really have in his heart anymore.
So they weren't actually enemies personally. It was more of like this rivalry for, you know, publicity purposes.
At one point they were not necessarily enemies, but they did have beef.
Okay. But they were also friends at one point.
They were also friends at one point, and it was also kind of this rivalry that was blown out of proportion, and that, like I said, in the Tupac one, he had a diss track called Hit 'Em Up where he talked about sleeping with Biggie's wife, and no one knows if that's true or not, you know.
But if anything, it's an escalation. I mean, even if it's not true, it's like something you say that you know is going to get under the other guy's skin, you know? It's like talking about someone's mom, talking about someone's sister, talking about someone's wife.
Yeah.
Like, that's how you really get someone.
So, that's really all I have for Biggie. I didn't do a lot because I based it off of, like, that one theory. And that theory is basically the most solid one that I could find.
Yeah.
Like I said, I got my stuff from BuzzFeed Unsolved. I got a little bit from Wikipedia. And I got some of the quotes from New York Post. And I got a lot of the information about Tupac and Biggie's relationship also from the New York Post. But what I think is interesting about Biggie's murder is like the fact that there's all these similarities between him and Tupac, and the fact that they were friends at one point and then they were enemies.
And you said they died about 6 months apart.
They died about 6 months apart, yeah.
Wow.
So in my opinion, there's no way that it's not connected.
And technically, Sean Combs is like a connection point between them.
Yeah.
Right.
So is Suge Knight.
And Suge Knight, they were both there right around, that same area at that same time when both murders occurred.
Yep. And a lot of people say that Suge Knight was in it with the cops. But just like Tupac's murder, there wasn't a lot of cooperation between the entourage and the cops, because there's that huge stigma between
Well, especially the LAPD at that time. The Rodney King
the
beating
riots
had just happened.
So of course there wasn't any.
Yeah, exactly. There was a lot of ill will, specifically at that time in that place. Between those two communities. And
so this kind of thing, and I guess this is the same thing with the O.J. Simpson case too, except that was, when was that? Was that
94?
94, so it was within the same time span, the same decade that Tupac was killed, Biggie was killed, the Rodney King riots happened, O.J. Simpson was convicted, all of this happened.
O.J. Simpson was acquitted.
I thought convicted meant that they was taking him to trial.
No, that's arraigned or charged.
Oh, okay. He was charged. Whatever. Yeah. But all of this happened, so of course there's, like you said, ill will between the police and the black community in general.
Right. And even though OJ did get acquitted, there are probably some people who felt like,
to this day,
that he got a raw deal even with that, that he was only being, prosecuted, which I think is crap. I mean... Oh,
he totally did it.
It really...
Here I am as a black woman, and I'm saying that.
Well, it just... From an objective standpoint, it really seems like he did it.
He totally did it.
If you look at the evidence, it, seems to point toward Orenthal, James Simpson.
But that doesn't mean that millions of black people aren't being treated like shit by police anyway.
Oh, no, of course. And there are a lot of people who are put in jail wrongfully,
And again, it makes sense during that time for the whole black community to be like, what's the LAPD doing here? But those
but it
fucking
also means,
gloves.
I know.
Jesus.
I know, that whole
That's
thing
a whole
was
other
so
thing.
crazy.
We should do an episode on OJ. That'd be cool.
That would be a good one. But we'd have to do, a lot more research.
Oh, for sure.
Because it's, one that everyone kind of knows
Do I want to do that much research, though? Do I want to put that much time in? Maybe during the summer when I don't have other homework to do.
Right.
Anywho, that's...
So, yeah, that was... So, how old was Biggie when he died? Because I know Tupac, you said, was 25. Was Biggie pretty young, too?
Tupac was 24.
24.
Biggie was 25.
Oh, okay, so they were right around
the
same age.
Yes.
Wow.
They were kids.
So that's what seems so crazy to me, too, because they were both so young, and yet...
Height of their careers.
They're both such huge figures, and, continue to be such huge figures. And I know at least Tupac has had, many, many posthumous releases, right? He had, a whole catalog, basically, that they released, in piecemeal, after he died. I don't know if it's the same thing with Biggie, but I think
his
that's
album
also
was still
helped
released.
Right, but has he had more stuff come out since then?
That I don't know.
Because I know Tupac, he kind of still had new stuff coming out, even years later, which fueled this conspiracy theory about him not really being dead. Exactly, But until I see a picture of Tupac with today's newspaper next to him, I don't think I don't think that's plausible. But what's also interesting to me...
I know many people who can make that picture happen.
Exactly. But what's interesting to me is that no one has that theory, or at least I haven't heard it, about Biggie. Like, does that just say, something about how popular Tupac was vis-a-vis Biggie? Or what does that really say?
Here's the thing. I'm not really sure why it's as popular with Biggie.
With Tupac.
Right. Sorry. Why that theory is more popular with Tupac. Maybe because people claim to have seen Tupac, and maybe there's people that thoroughly believe that they did see Tupac.
But isn't that because they wanted to see him?
Exactly. But that's a good question. Yeah. But I know it is a theory. There are people who do say that he's still out there. Both of them are still out there. It's just not as popular and not as glorified and in the media as it is with Tupac.
Right, and that's what it seemed to me, is basically a consequence of just kind of this overwhelming love that people have for Tupac. Because of, his message and, kind of like what he meant to his community.
I didn't look up why. I should have. But that night at the Soul Train Awards, Biggie was presenting an award and he got booed.
Really? Mm-hmm. I wonder if it's because people blamed him for Tupac's death.
Maybe that's why.
Interesting.
I mean, he was a suspect.
Well, if you want to look into that, maybe do an addendum next time.
For sure. I feel like there's a lot more I should have done.
Well, if you want to keep going, you can always add on more later. Or maybe do another one later on about it.
Maybe we could edit. Oh, wait.
Oh, no.
Edit, uncut, raw. Bleh.
Exactly.
Okay.
You ready? Ready for me?
Ready for mine? I'm always ready for you, Mario.
Oh, thanks. Creepy. For our radio listeners, Chloe just gave me a creepy wink.
Yep.
Which I feel like she's getting back at me for the creepy winks I give her, which happens.
Yeah, when Mario and I were first going out, he used to wink at me. I didn't even know who he was.
That's not true. That's so not true.
I see the APL and he would wink at me.
No.
None of this would be happening if that was true.
Right. Okay, so I'm doing the assassination of former Swedish Prime Minister Olof Palme.
Mario, you're doing another political assassination? Yeah. I'm not complaining. I just think it's interesting.
This is going to be a lot of them that I do. So there's a lot of them.
Oh, for sure.
There are so many.
So who's involved with this one? Is it Russia?
Russia is not one of the suspects. So we'll get off of our Russia bashing for today.
Russia bashing.
Just to clarify again, everything that I talk about in terms of, the bad stuff in Russia, it's the government. It's fucking Putin and his cronies. I love the Russian people, and Russia is an amazing country that has a great history and culture. Just to clarify. But anyway, talking about Olof Palme and his assassination. So
this is the Prime Minister.
The former Prime Minister of Sweden.
Oh, so that's a big deal.
Oh, yeah. No, this was...
That's scary.
This was
that's scary.
The equivalent of the JFK assassination.
Wow.
It emotionally crippled the Swedish people. And I'll get into it in a little bit, but part of why they talk about the initial investigation being bungled is because of how impacted the policemen were and policewomen were, and that they basically couldn't function well enough to do their jobs because they were just emotionally devastated by this man's death. But just to kind of tell the story of what happened, initially, that night, rather. So it was 40 minutes before midnight in Stockholm on February 28th, 1986. A mere 8.5 months or so before I was born, just to date myself, literally. February 28th, 1986, Olof Palme and his wife Lisbeth are...
I love that name.
Lisbeth, yeah, it's nice, are walking home from seeing a movie. No bodyguard, just kind of last-minute plans that they had, and they didn't really feel it was necessary. It wasn't a normal thing for them to walk around, because this is I just want to underscore it again, not something that normally happens or had ever happened in Sweden before. So they don't have that same kind of history of, assassinations like we do. So he's walking with his wife in not a crowd of people, but there were a good number of people around. And this is downtown Stockholm, the capital of Sweden. Wow. And basically a man is like lurking and walks up to them, shoots Olof Palme. He's killed instantly. I think he gets shot twice or 3 times. And his wife is also shot, but only sustains a minor injury. But it seems like the killer meant to shoot both of them and kill them. Palme is pronounced dead on arrival to the hospital. So he's killed basically instantly. And like I said, when this happened and the word got out, it was the biggest, most, heartbreaking thing that had basically ever happened in modern Sweden. So the police were basically in chaos in the immediate aftermath of the murder, which definitely, according to a number of people, that I read in my sources, handicapped the investigation right from the outset. Bystanders were allowed to roam all over the scene. Any forensic evidence, including, fingerprints or footprints or
that's also
anything,
problem,
was just trampled. And they didn't secure the scene for, I think, hours after this had happened.
That's crucial time right
Extremely crucial. So there was evidence that was destroyed, and the bullet casings were actually just found by a couple of random guys who were just, walking around. They weren't even found by the police. The murder weapon has never been recovered. There was a gun that was found in the middle of a lake in Stockholm in, 2012, I think. Mm-hmm. But it was never conclusively linked to the crime. No, they kind of thought, maybe this is going to be, which is kind of a recurring theme with this, this time maybe we've really found out what's going to happen. But it's basically a series of disappointments. And like I said, although this happened in front of many people and there were a number of eyewitnesses, no one could really describe the assailant other than saying, he's white, between 30 and 50, average height, average build. He looked like a man, if you remember, the old Mad TV sketch, It was basically that.
You look like a man.
Right. I'll let you do the controversial impression of an impression.
Miss Swan?
Of Miss Swan that we can't edit out because
I didn't know Miss
MMT
Swan
Raw was
mocking.
It's
culture.
Looking back on it, it's
really
that's really insensitive.
Until years after I watched it, I was like, oh wow,
that's kind of not okay. So, although the initial investigation was bungled and evidence was destroyed, etc., the Swedish police did embark on what's basically the largest criminal investigation in history in the Western world. Bigger than the JFK investigation, bigger than the Lockerbie investigation. There were over 10,000 people who eventually were questioned. Over 100 people called to confess to the assassination.
Of course.
Which always tends to... It's one of the weird things with stuff like this. People will just call, and they won't even know basic facts about the crime, but they'll call and say that they did it. I don't know what it is about people.
That is so backwards to me.
I don't understand it. But it is a real thing. It's a real phenomenon. People will confess to crimes that they definitely have not committed. Had no possibility of committing. So that's another weird thing. But of all these, 130 to 160 people who've, over the years, kind of confessed to the crime, none of them has panned out. They all seem to be erroneous. But, like I said, this is kind of the first of these failed, times when, we got it, they think. In 1988, a suspect was arrested. Now, his name is Christer Peterson. He was 41. He was an alcoholic, a drug addict, an outcast. He had been involved with the police about 60 times.
Wow.
Some was petty crimes,
That's a big number.
petty theft, a lot of times, yeah. But one of them was a murder. I think it was eventually ruled manslaughter, but it happened about 200 meters away from where Olof Palme was murdered, but in December of 1970. So 16 years before.
Does that really mean anything?
No, of course not.
Yeah, because...
It's just a weird thing.
Yeah.
And it gave them, the police rather, the ability to paint Mr. Peterson as someone who would, be capable of this
And this was
crime.
probably also a crime they wanted to get done.
Oh, of course.
They had that haste from the public.
Yeah, and it had already been 2 years since it happened. And yes, there was a lot of pressure to find someone, to get someone to pin this crime on. And Christer Peterson was one of the usual suspects, He was also known to hang around in the area, and he was identified by Lisbeth Palme and another witness as the murderer. But as we know, eyewitness testimony is not reliable. You think that it is. You would think that it would be. We've found out it is not. So, sorry. It's just not. It just doesn't pan out. You would.
Sorry, guys.
I wish that it were. Watch Forensic File. I can't watch Forensic Files anymore because like half of that crap is like not
I know, I can't
real.
watch it anymore either.
Anyway, Christer Peterson was convicted, but his conviction was pretty quickly afterwards overturned, like 4 months later or something. Partly because there was absolutely no forensic evidence linking him to the crime. It clearly seemed like they were just trying to pin it on him. So it was overturned on appeal. And he was actually given $50,000 from the government for false imprisonment.
Oh.
Christer Peterson, like I said, he was a drug addict, an alcoholic. He blew through that money.
Oh, for sure.
Reportedly, on, his various vices. And he actually died in 2004. Apparently of a fall. Probably due to intoxication of some sort or another.
Sad.
Yeah, so...
I mean, he fucking killed somebody, but
Yeah, I mean, he did actually kill someone at one point. So, basically, for the next 30-odd years, there were a number of sort of drips and drabs of information coming in, and a number of different potential suspects that people have pointed to. And I'll get into some of those here in a little bit. But, just to mention kind of the way that the investigation went. Initially, the head of, kind of criminal prosecution or whatever, the head policeman in Stockholm micromanaged the case. I think he just felt like, this is so big, it's so important, he needs to take it over personally. That does not seem to have been the best thing for the investigation. Because he basically started pointing it in different directions that he personally felt that it should go in.
Oh,
not really following the evidence.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was replaced, and over the next 30 years, there were, I think, 5 or 6 different heads of the investigation. Most recently, a man named Christer Peterson, spelled with a K instead of a CH, which is a weird thing. Totally different person. An organized crime specialist, who's, just a long-time policeman in Stockholm, took up the case in 2016. And I wasn't really able to find anything after that. I tried to find something.
After when? 2015?
After 2016.
2016?
Right. So there was a new prosecutor who was put in charge in 2016, and I really couldn't find any updates after that. So...
Got some theories?
we'll get into some theories here in just a second, but just as kind of a precursor to that, I wanted to talk about, Olof Palme himself. And now that we've kind of gone, what happened in the murder and kind of the investigation, let's take a little bit of a step back and give some context in terms of, like, who was this guy? Why would he have enemies? Why would people want him killed, right? So, Olof Palme, like I said initially, his murder was essentially the same as, like, JFK. Like, he was incredibly beloved by a certain section of Swedish society. And he was incredibly hated by another section of Swedish society. And he was a left-wing politician. So, he was a big supporter of the ANC, which was the Nelson Mandela's party in South Africa.
Yes.
And he was really, really against the South African apartheid government. He also criticized the U.S. heavily for our involvement in Vietnam, and he also was, in some ways, linked to Russia and to Moscow. He was kind of like friendly with them. I think because he was, kind of more of a socialist. He also helped in the Iran-Iraq war to try to broker peace between Iran and Iraq. Although that didn't actually happen until 1988. But he was known as a humanitarian, as someone who really believed in liberal values, and who was willing to step up and fight for those values, speak up for those values, even when it was not good for him politically or for his country diplomatically. So he was the kind of person who would say things in a meeting with a foreign head of state that really you're not supposed to say, that are kind of impolitic, because he felt like he needed to stand up for what he, thought were human rights and what was right. So just to kind of, understand that this was a man who made a lot of friends that way and a lot of admirers that way, but also made a lot of enemies that way, for sure. And some of those enemies are some of the ones, obviously, who people think may have been behind his murder. And also just to underscore that there has, up to this point, there was no significant history of political violence in Sweden. This was sui generis.
Wow.
According to what I was reading, this was pretty much unique in modern Sweden in terms of having this kind of political violence. So, to get into some of the theories, I'll start out with the ones that have less evidence for them, and then get to some of the more, plausible. Kind of the one more plausible one. So, first of all, the South African government being behind it, obviously for Olof Palme's opposition to the apartheid government. Which, just briefly, if you're not aware, apartheid refers to the separation of the races. The United States had an apartheid government for quite a long time.
Yes.
The South African apartheid government existed until 1994. The author Stieg Larsson oddly comes into play with this theory. He was the author of the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and that series of books.
Oh, I read that.
Yeah.
I read that book.
So Stieg Larsson also had a big interest in this case. Obviously, he's Swedish and, naturally. But he was also a big, crime guy, true crime guy. And he actually had like 15 big files on the crime that he had been housing himself that basically implicated a known assassin who was working for the South African apartheid government. And there was some indications that it may have been that person, or maybe a different person who's also linked to the South African government who committed the crime. But again, although there have been people who've made statements to that effect, there have also been people who've made statements to different effects vis-a-vis different countries. So it's a little hard to know. This may just be kind of a rabbit hole or wild turkey chase or whatever, wild goose chase. That's the words I was trying to get out. And there's really no like physical evidence or anything to back it up. Another one for which there's also no real evidence is that it was Kurdish rebels, specifically the Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK. Kurdish terrorists did take sanctuary in Sweden in the 1980s, so there were some PKK members in the country, but there's just no real
There's
evidence.
no evidence
that they were linked to it at all.
in the same place, same time type thing.
Yeah, there's just no evidence that they were linked to it. There's also a theory that it was right-wing Swedish police who were behind the murder, because basically they, vehemently disagreed with Palma's, stances on police and policing and just generally. But again, no evidence that that's the case. People also speculate that it could have been the Masons. But, again...
Like the Freemasons?
Yeah, like the Freemasons. And I didn't really...
Is that an international group? I didn't know that.
Yeah. But it, again, just kind of seems to be rank speculation. So one theory that there's kind of more plausible, backing for is that it was carried out, that the assassination of Olof Palme was carried out by the Yugoslavian secret police known as the UDBA. And the theory here is that Palme may have gotten caught up in the secret war, which we do know was going on at that time.
The what?
The secret war. So in other words, a conflict, but not an open conflict, kind of a covert conflict.
Was that happening between Switzerland and...
No, that's what I was about to get into.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. So between the Yugoslavian government under Marshal Tito and his opponents living abroad, some of whom were living in Sweden, but also other countries. So basically, the UDBA was carrying out missions in other countries to assassinate people.
So that could be one of their missions?
That maybe Palme was seen as being an obstruction to them carrying out their assassinations and their violence. So he also had to be gotten rid of.
Oh, okay.
That's the theory. And we do know that the UDBA carried out about 100 assassinations between the mid-60s and 1991.
Jesus.
So they would have been more than willing and able to do this. And in 2011, a UDBA operative basically said that they were behind the killing, and that it was a false flag operation to implicate Croatian radicals. So basically they were doing it and made it tried to make it look as though it was Croatian radicals who did it.
Well, they didn't do a good job.
In a bid to implicate them and get them in trouble, right?
So is that a theory too?
That's the most plausible theory, which this kind of feeds into, is that it actually was Croatian radicals who were behind it. And just as a footnote to that last one, the UDBA was known to conduct this type of false flag operation. So again, it's plausible. But also, again, on the other hand, there have been a number of different people who have confessed or said that it was these other people in mutually exclusive ways. So it's hard to take any of them with that much credence. But to get into this, just another side theory before I get to the Croatian radicals theory, which again seems like the most plausible. Some other people think that it may have been an American spy doing it at the behest of the Pinochet government in Chile, who was also an enemy of Olof Palme. But anyway, the Croatian radicals, Lisbeth Palme, the wife of Olof Palme, thinks that this is the most likely theory, that it was Croatian radicals, and that they killed Olof because of his opposition to their use of violence in Sweden. So in a sort of similar way that these Croatian radicals were trying to, off their Yugoslav enemies, because at this time, Yugoslavia was still a single country, but there were Croatians who wanted Croatia to be its own country, right? And they were, sort of carrying out these terrorist attacks to try to make that happen. including a terrorist attack on the Yugoslav embassy in Stockholm, and also the hijacking of a Scandinavian Airlines DC-9 flight.
Wow.
So, again, these were, people who...
So that does seem very plausible then.
Yeah.
If they've done,
Right, that we know that they definitely were involved in violence in Sweden around the same time. So, the reason why this is all still very mysterious is because although there are, myriad people who've confessed to it and said that their organizations or other organizations were behind it, still, there's no physical evidence. There's no forensic, plausible evidence that links any of these parties to the crime itself. And that's why, really, we'll just never know. But to me, those last two, well, not the American one, but the Yugoslav secret police or the Croatian radicals, those definitely seem like the most plausible. But at this point, it's not clear that we'll ever find out.
It doesn't seem like it.
But although that's the case, there have been anywhere between 2 and 5 Swedish police working on this case since then, including one who had been working on it from 1986 all the way to, I think the article I read was like 2014.
Wow.
And he was like going to retire in a couple of years. But yeah, I think if I recall correctly, it said they've spent, I don't remember, like $40 million or something on the investigation so far. And they actually changed the statute. They actually got rid of the statute of limitations, rather, on murder in Sweden. It was 25 years.
Shouldn't we do that?
There is no statute of limitations on murder in the United States.
Wow.
Yeah,
Great job,
I'm not
Chloe.
sure that there ever has been. But it was 25 years in Sweden, and just before the 25th anniversary of Olof Palme's murder,
changed it?
They got rid of it. And they claimed that it wasn't because of that,
Well,
but clearly it was.
Yeah.
And they've kept the investigation going, presumably all the way up until today. I mean, like I said, I know they added a new prosecutor just in 2016. So, who knows? Maybe someday we'll find out. And if I hear something, I'll definitely update y'all.
That was good. Good job.
Thanks. So yeah, let's I guess do some weird shit in the news.
Okay, so mine's also very quick.
Okay.
So I saw on Twitter, and then we also heard on NPR when we were coming back, that Amazon's Alexa has been cackling at people.
Can you say Alexa a couple more times?
No. That's fine.
In case it's, opening up people's Alexa.
Is Alexa on... Oh, that would be funny as hell.
I'm not sure that actually happens, but I think it might.
If I was, said Alexa over the phone to somebody and, she could hear me.
I think we've said Alexa, 18 times now.
Alexa?
Also, we're not editing this.
Alexa?
Okay, go on.
Well, that she's been, cackling.
Right.
At inopportune times and
right.
Unprompted. Mm-hmm. So usually the Echo or the Dot or whatever you have,
Ghost in the Machine,
the Fire, is prompted by when you talk to it,
right.
by something verbal. But apparently she's been laughing.
Yeah.
I read some tweets, pretty creepy stuff. We heard about it on NPR, read a couple articles about it. It's pretty weird. It's some Black Mirror shit right there.
Yep.
Nope.
I'm not gonna
I wanted one. I wanted one until I heard the story.
Right.
I don't want her laughing at me. I read one that was this girl was asked Alexa to set a timer because she was doing planks. And when she asked Alexa how much time she had left, Alexa just laughed.
Oh, you fool. Time is a construct.
Oh, God. But they say it's witch-like, and it's more of a cackle.
Yeah. Probably it's a witch's soul who's embodied within the Alexa system.
Well, you said it was a hacker.
Or that. More likely.
But, yeah, weird,
or just
right?
a glitch or something.
Some weird shit.
That is weird. That is definitely weird. Okay, I'll do mine now. So mine is from a story in Vanity Fair, and y'all have probably heard about this, but if you haven't, it's pretty weird. the Frances McDormand stolen Oscar statue caper gets weirder. That's the name of the Vanity Fair article. The headline, rather. So, yeah, I don't know if you heard, Frances McDormand's Oscar for Best Actress was stolen at the Oscars after party.
That would happen to me. I'd leave that shit leading on the table. Like,
I'm pretty sure she was holding it at the time. This was also in front of a huge crowd of people, and also obviously being photographed and filmed. So there was no way this guy was going to get away with this. And what makes it weirder is that this guy, his name is Terry Bryant, he's 47 years old, and he's basically like a professional party crasher. Like, this is what he does. He dresses up in a tuxedo. He goes to parties after the Golden Globes, after the Oscars, after the Emmys.
Not cool.
He has been there for all of these.
He just seems like an asshole to me.
He's a hanger-oner, for sure. And he also seems like he's maybe a bit of a pathological liar.
Oh,
because
God.
he claims to have, like, worked with all these people and to be, like, a producer. And seems like it's all maybe kind of bullshit. Like, he has one song
I did not hear about this.
He has one song on Spotify called Greatness.
He sounds like Kanye West if Kanye West wasn't successful.
Right, exactly.
But Kanye West can, like, do the shit that he says because he's, like...
He's also taken,
legend.
like, 2 pictures with Beyonce and claims that he, like, knows her personally. It's very strange. Here, this is a picture of him.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so, I mean, you look at him, he looks, like, pretty respectable, right? I mean, like, if you saw him at the party, you'd think, oh, there's just another guy. But what apparently got him in this instance is that a photographer, like, saw him, you know, like an official photographer of the thing saw him and was like, I do not remember that guy getting an Oscar. And was like, hey, you know, told, like, one of the security guys, like, hey, I don't think that's his Oscar. Like, I don't remember him getting an Oscar. And he was, like, filming, like, a selfie video to,
with
like,
the Oscar?
Yeah.
What an idiot!
To, like, post on Instagram. But not only that, he was like, oh, it's for music. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So it's not totally...
From your one song on Spotify titled Greatness? I don't fucking think so.
Yeah, I don't know.
And that's what a Grammy is for.
Well,
right?
you can get an Oscar for music, too.
But for, like, music in a movie.
Yeah. Presumably that's what he would have been talking about.
God.
But it's also, to me, it's kind of unclear if maybe there's some mental illness involved here, too.
That might be true.
So I don't know. I want to reserve my judgment to some extent. Maybe this guy has something. I don't know. I want to leave some room for empathy.
You never know.
You never know. And he also...
That's a good point.
He also did not resist at all. Like, when they came and took it away from him and took him away, he just went. You know, and he let it go. So, I don't know. Frances McDormand, obviously I feel bad for her too. Like, fuck, that's gotta be a fucking horrible feeling. If even for 1 minute...
Oh my God.
You know, you think you've lost your Oscar. Well, I don't know. Maybe Frances McDormand's like, whatever, I don't give a shit about that statue. I know I'm the best actress. I fucking love Frances McDormand too. This is just an excuse for me to say she's like one of my favorite actors. Fucking love Frances McDormand. I always have. I love her in Fargo. She was obviously amazing in 3 Billboards. Amazing actor. Anyway, I also wanted to do some good shit in the news.
Go for it.
So, I don't know if y'all had seen this too, but if you remember a man named Philando Castile, who tragically was killed by a police officer during a traffic stop.
Many names.
Many people to whom this has happened. Wasn't doing anything wrong, by the way. Not that would justify it, obviously, but this man was a saint. Like, he was like a modern day Kris Kringle. He helped kids out. He was beloved in his community. He was just like a paragon of society. And one of his big causes and, like, big, kind of ways in which he would give back to the community was if a kid, because he was a school lunch worker, if a kid wasn't able to pay for his or her lunch, he would pay for it. Just, like, on a regular basis. And this was a guy not making a lot of money. I mean, he's a school lunch worker, right? He is not getting rich, right?
Yeah.
And he is, or was, I should say, I mean, he's deceased now, rest in peace, would take some of the little money that he had and give it to these kids, just like such a good person. So I'm like getting emotional.
Well, yeah, it's just fucked up, and I'm so fucking sick of it. I'm sorry, it pisses me off.
I know, but this is good. This is good.
Okay.
But anyway, a foundation was set up in his name, and they basically paid off like all the student lunch debt in his district recently.
Wow.
So, and I'm assuming they're going to, continue to do that on a continuing basis. So, basically that legacy of, Philando Castile making sure, like, you're going to get to eat, little kid, and you don't have to worry about having a fucking debt when you're 10 years old that you have to worry about, which is another tragedy in this country. But anyway, that's also a different story. But because of, his greatness and his caring and empathy for these people, other people have taken up that cause and are going to make sure that, at least in his community, that gets taken forward, in the right way.
That's
so good on them, good on his legacy.
Good things.
It's good. It's
good things in the world.
Good things.
Dogs still exist, you guys. It's okay.
True. All dogs go to heaven.
All dogs go to heaven.
All right. All Philando Castiles go to heaven.
All Philando Castiles go to God bless.
Right.
God bless.
God bless.
God bless.
And God bless you guys for listening to us.
Thank you for listening, for real. Right? Rate us, subscribe, do all that stuff.
Right.
Follow us on Instagram.
Thanks for waiting a day for my fucked up
Instagram
computer.
Called? What's our podcast called?
Mystery
Murdery thingy. That's literally what it is on Facebook. Or not Facebook, Instagram.
Right.
What's our podcast called?
We also have a Facebook page that we were talking about earlier. Although it is closed, I mean, you can definitely, like, look up... Right? Can you look it up and, like, ask to join?
I think so.
Probably.
If not,
I'm not
we'll
a big
make
Facebooker.
It that way.
Yeah.
I'll make it that way if not.
I don't know.
We're still new at
You
this.
can also email us. I guess we should say that too.
Yeah, you can email us. Email us at mysterymurderythingy@gmail.com. Mysterymurdery, MURDERY, murdery thingy.
Yeah.
THINGY. Y's, no IEs.
Yeah, just Y's, all spelled out. Mystery Murdery Thingy. If you just like want to tell us fuck you, or I love you, or like other things.
Chloe's pretty hot, stuff like that.
Tell us about your mysteries.
Tell us about your mysteries. That would be fucking great. If you've got a mystery, you know one, you've got your own damn theory, or maybe people can send us in their own theories on what happened on stuff that we've done. Maybe that could be a segment. That could be a thing. Yeah. We'll think about it. If we get enough emails, we'll do it. Love us. Okay, we should probably wrap up, I guess. Thanks for listening. Yeah. Bye. Bye. Good job, by you. Oh, God.